This episode of All About Mythos originally aired on KWDC Delta College Radio and has been edited for YouTube. All research was done by Nico. Any potential misinformation is unintentional and caused by human error in the research process. Thank you for listening. My name is Nico, and joining me in the studio today we have Dani and Trena. Our show topic today is pre-colonial Filipino mythology and folklore, so sit back and enjoy our show. Hello to all listeners, welcome to All About Mythos, the radio show about mythology from all around the world. Today we'll be delving into Filipino mythology with the Tagalog creation story, various gods and creatures, and a bit about the religious practices of the time. So, what do you two know about Tagalog or Filipino anything?
Zero. I didn't even know it existed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I only found out about it in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so basically the Philippines, it's a collection of 7,641 islands. So there's going to be a lot of different cultures, beliefs, and dialects and stuff. So we're just going to be talking about mostly Tagalog mythology, because that's what my family is. Or at least I think that's what my family is. We're either Tagalog or Waray-Waray or something else. I'm not sure.
I had no idea there was more than one.
Yeah, there's Tagalog, Ilocano, Bukon, I think, bunch of others. Visayas, that's the main one. So this is going to have a different structure from the other episode, because the thing about the difference between Greek mythology and Filipino mythology is that Greek mythology is a lot better recorded, because they had plays and they made art and stuff on their gods and stuff. Filipino mythology is mostly orally told, so there are two main issues that comes up when researching Filipino mythology.
The Spanish destroyed everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it was an oral tradition, so a lot of the actual records of the mythology was recorded by the Spanish. So there's going to be a lot of biases, a lot of adapting it into a Catholic point of view. And then another issue is that since it was recorded by the Spanish, most of the documents are written in Spanish, and I don't speak or write or read Spanish.
Oh, man. Well, I would say I got you, but I can barely talk, okay?
Yeah, so I'm relying on the English translations and hoping that they work. So the main document that a lot of Filipino mythology comes from is the Boxer Codex, which is a Spanish document that was written in the 1590s about a whole bunch of different places in Asia and their people and their customs.
The 1590s?
Yep.
They were over there in the 1590s?
Yeah. Crazy. All of mythology that we know of comes from before the 16th century.
Wow.
So the Boxer Codex, it's the most important document for studying Filipino history in general. And let's see. So the beliefs of the Philippines, it was a mix of animism, polytheism, and ancestor worship. And
wait, what is animism?
Animism is the worship of animals and plants, or it's the belief that every animal or plant has a soul of their own.
That's banger. That's real.
And there was also a lot of Islamic, Hindu, and Buddhist influences on the religion because of trade and stuff with nearby countries.
Wait, sorry, going back to the time thing. So all of this is from before the 1600s, right?
Yeah.
So was this so the Spanish all wrote it on paper. So we have no way of knowing if any of this is real, properly written. So, not that it wasn't real, but, we have no way of knowing that the Spanish didn't just write random stuff down. And
yeah, I guess so, but I mean, they're meant to be historians.
Man.
So they have to document things accurately.
This is hella depressing.
Yeah. Doesn't mean that it's going to have a lack of bias, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of bias. Here's a quote that I have by Tomas Ortiz, written in 1731. It appears that the Indians learned all of this from the Sanglis of China, where all the above said is performed and executed to the letter. It is not right to allow them to retain these deceits of the Chinese, and not to teach them our customs and truths.
Dog. What?
Tomas Ortiz had so many little hating on
Why are you so
Filipino culture.
angry? Someone give this man a Snickers, dude.
It was ridiculous reading some of his stuff.
That's insane. That's insane.
So basically, there are multiple different gods, of course, since it's a polytheistic religion. And the main god is Bathala, who's the creator deity. And he basically created the world, and then he created all the other gods, which are known as Anido, to work closer to humans and act as agents to him. And humans were basically not able to talk to Bathala or pray to him at all. So they basically just prayed to the other Anido, who would pass the message on to Bathala.
Really? Why weren't they allowed to pray directly to...
It was basically just that the Anido were closer to being of the earth, and then Bathala is like an ethereal being, I guess you could call him.
That makes sense. Because you know how you have in all these other religions where it's like, don't take God's name in vain? You know, you completely avoid that by just praying to the footman, you know? No
Yeah.
disrespect.
The closest comparison I can think of is like the idea of gods and saint worship in Catholicism. But-
Yeah. But at
is
the
that
same
how it
time,
is?
like, not really. In Catholicism, you pray, like, directly to God, you know?
Mm.
Like, if you're going through a tough time, it's like, you know, God help me, or God give me a license, or however it translates in English. There's a meme that used to go around that was like me driving with the license of God, because that's a thing Mexicans say all the time. But yeah, you really pray. I think saints are a lot more like they'll be popular in specific regions, like where I'm from in Zacatecas. Like my last name is the name of a saint. So like in my family, we really worship that specific saint, you know, on my dad's side, and then on my mom's side we worship San Pedro, because I don't know, that's just the saint that her family grew up with. So I think it really depends on like where you go, where they worship like one specific saint. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because I heard in Italian folklore, you like worship all the saints, and like you pray to specific saints for specific things.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So offerings were never given to Bathala. So they were given to the Anido before and below him. And Bathala was also sometimes called Anatala, which was thought to come from Arabic meaning Allah Ta'ala, meaning mighty God. So that shows some of the Islamic influence. And there is a decent demographic of Islamic people, of Muslims in the Philippines. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting how they would trade and religion would just pass along. Because they say that in, you know, history books all the time, how religion would pass through by trade. But to actually, you know, like hear about the effects on like a real tangible religion, you know?
Yeah. And like I've heard that like Zeus from Greek mythology is like another version of a god that comes from a much older religion. So it's very interesting how religions like interact. All right, so next we're going to be moving on to the Tagalog creation myth. So basically, the thing about the Tagalog creation myth is that it's basically identical to the Visayan creation myth. So it's possible that they held the same belief, but it's also possible that there was mistranslation or it was mistold, and that the actual Tagalog myth hasn't actually been recorded at all. So basically, the world started as just sea and sky, so there wasn't any land. And then a bird was flying around, and of course it eventually got tired from just flying everywhere. So it decided to rile up the sea and convince it to attack the sky. And then the sky defended itself by throwing rocks down at the sea to prevent it from rising up. And those rocks became the islands. And in the Visayan version, the sky and the sea were married. So
Oh, okay.
the bird basically caused a couples fight.
Oh my god. Domestic abuse. Never mind. I take back the awe.
Yeah, so after that, the sky got tired of the bird and asked them to leave it alone and just build a nest on the islands.
I like how, because my expectation of where the story was going to go was the bird, pulls up an island because it's tired, but no. We have the sky and the sea literally fighting for dominance. That's cool.
Pretty much. They get into a little bit of a spat. So then there's also the land breeze and the sea breeze, and those two were married. And they had a child that was Bamboo. So the first Bamboo. Their little baby Bamboo.
That's cute.
That is cute.
So the bamboo was floating on the water, and it came across the bird and basically just bumped into the bird. And the bird got mad and started pecking at it. And out of the bamboo came the first man and woman. And then the man and woman got married. They had a bunch of children, and the children ended up creating all of the different races of people, and they had a lot of children, and those children all became lazy and useless, and the parents got annoyed with them.
That's the realest story ever, dude. Just a generational disappointment in the younger generation.
I don't know. I feel like the bigger families are, the less children do. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're always oh, my parents, they're always, their attention's always somewhere else. So they're just they're either doing their own thing or they're trying to get attention by doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So basically, they were getting tired of their children being lazy, and they had a ton of children, so they didn't have any peace. So, because they were too busy taking care of their kids.
Me.
So the father took a stick and began beating his kids. And the kids got very scared and panicked, so they ended up running everywhere, which caused humanity to be spread across the world in the islands. And they had specific categories of people depending on where they ran. So basically, people who hid in the hidden rooms of their house became chiefs. The people who hid in the walls became slaves. The people who hid in the fireplace became basically the Aboriginals, which come from Malay and Indonesia. And they're the first people that came to the Philippines, historically. And then the people who fled to the sea were just white people. So
I'm not sure if I'm taking things out of context, but so everything started out of domestic abuse, from islands to people to the spread of humanity.
Pretty much. So that's basically the entire creation myth, and that's how humans came to be.
Asian people being disappointed in their kids, even in myth.
It goes back deep. As far as our creation. Literally.
It literally does.
Literally.
That hurts.
The thing is, before I started researching for this episode specifically, I'd heard of another creation myth from another part of the Philippines, and it was very different from this one. It didn't have the domestic abuse.
Okay.
So when I was researching for this one, I looked for specifically the Tagalog myth, and I was so confused because I was what? I don't remember this.
Does the other one still have their parents being disappointed in the kids?
I don't remember it anymore, but it had man and woman coming from a stalk of reed instead of bamboo, and yeah,
they were you will be a lawyer and you will be a doctor, and all the kids ran away.
I don't remember the rest of it, but I think that was just the main similarity, and then I think it was a lot different from the ending of this one.
Important question.
Yes.
Was the stick also bamboo?
I think it was.
I mean, bamboo's great. I don't know what. What do you guys want it to be? Just a piece of grass?
I mean, it's kind of funny. They came out of bamboo, and then he beats his child with bamboo.
Ouch.
Full circle.
Full circle.
It's the first Lion King.
Let's go. It's the circle of life. Wait, so if in myth everyone was born of a stick of bamboo, was there, because I know in like Mesoamerican culture, Mesoamericans actually engineered corn. Like corn back then did not exist anywhere in the wild.
Never.
That's
And
cool.
so they engineered corn, and they would eat so much of it that like they would worship it, right? And I'm wondering, like, in Filipino mythology, is it that, you know, their belief is that everyone comes from bamboo? Do you worship bamboo?
I'm sure that bamboo is probably a very important part of like offerings and stuff, but as far as I saw, they don't worship it. Like, yeah, it's probably just a big part of like offerings.
Big part of culture.
Yeah, I know that they would represent Bathala as like a blue bird, or like if there was a blue bird nearby, then they would like consider it just Bathala hanging out.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Watching down.
All right, so next we're gonna be talking about just two of the gods and goddesses that I thought were really cool. All right, so the thing that makes I'm comparing Filipino mythology to Greek mythology a lot just because it's my main source of reference, but Filipino mythology and Greek mythology treat their gods very differently in that in the Greek pantheon, all the gods are related. In the Filipino one, Bathala just created all of them. And there are only a couple of gods that are related to each other.
No incest, let's go. No
Let's
incest,
go.
let's go.
So it's just like they marry each other and they have kids, but they're not like related to each other at all, which is great.
That's
So-
great. We love
Great.
no cut that out. Cut that out. Ow.
We're going to start with the goddess Lakapati. So she is an intersex and or transgender goddess of fertility and sown
What?
fields. Whether she's transgender and intersex or just intersex is up for debate, because the Spaniards first recorded her as male, then later recorded her as a figure of man and woman altogether, and then a lot of modern depictions just view her as a woman, and like a lot of art depict her as more feminine.
It's very interesting how the goddess of fertility is intersex.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I
Also-
think that's really cool.
Is she related to like flowers a lot? Because that happens a lot with flowers. They
Yeah.
have both.
From what I saw, not really. Like, she's just worshipped when they start a new farm, I guess. So, what's interesting is that transgender people were socially accepted in pre-colonial Philippines, and it was very common to see people that we would now call trans women dressing up as women, marrying men, and doing tasks that were typically assigned to women. And it's really interesting how, like, a lot of Asian cultures and, like, Native American and I think African, like, a lot of those cultures were accepting of transgender people.
Yeah, like they were
So-
just chill.
It was
I hate how the British were the most powerful country in the world and they decided to just do all of what they did. Like,
Didn't they colonize for spices they don't use?
exactly. And then they went on to believe that women were just plain useless. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why you would have all that power and consolidate it into one place.
Yeah, the thing is, like, pretty much every non-white culture before the white people came were accepting of, like, queer people. So what was wrong with the white
Exactly.
people?
Why were they so hateful? Maybe they just hated being amongst one another. Because Europeans were they made really like they would have all these really tight villages. Maybe they just hated each other from the start because they were forced to be neighbors. Because geographically Europe is a lot smaller than all of these other places.
Maybe it was the cold climate.
Yeah.
They couldn't grow anything there.
Exactly.
But then again, like, I'm pretty sure, like, the Inuit from Canada were probably accepting too. So,
Yeah.
and they could grow even less there.
Europeans were just mad. Maybe it was the food. No spices. I know I'd be mad if I had to eat beans on toast for breakfast.
And another similarity with the Philippines and a lot of Native American cultures was that trans people were often seen as closer to the divine, and they often became spiritual leaders, and like the highest spiritual authority of the Catalanans, which were priests, they were transgender people. So basically, Lakapati, her name likely translates from the word Lakan, meaning noble ruler, and she's said to be the most understanding and kind among the deities of Bathala, and she was one of the most worshipped and loved deities. And some depictions of her say that she married the god Mapulan, which was the god of seasons, and they ended up having a daughter, Anagolay, who became the goddess of lost things.
Goddess of lost things?
Yeah.
That's so cute. Pray to the god of the lost and found. I lost my water bottle the other day, and they said...
The one that I gave you?
Yes!
Bruh.
And I went to the office, and they said, call the police, because that's the lost and found now. And I called, and they said they had no water bottle.
That's so sad.
But if we had a god of lost and found, I could have had it.
Man, you should pray to her.
Praying to the god. For my CTE Delta water bottle.
Give her rice.
Exactly.
That was like one of the main offerings, I'm pretty sure. So that's pretty much all you can learn about Lakapati because, again, the Filipino stories weren't recorded at all, which is a bit disappointing, but it's fine.
It is disappointing, but in a way, it's... If they had survived orally, that's... on its own is beautiful because of the way that a story will become unique to like a certain region or a group of people, like how, I'm not sure, people will just make up the myth and use, whatever in their surroundings. And the differences between those narratives is honestly so interesting. Like, I know there's no one solid narrative, but, having multiple of them is also... I think it's underrated,
Yeah. Like, I know that in, like, the mountains of the Philippines, I'm pretty sure there's some people that still worship the gods. And, like, they probably have their own stories that you could, like, go to them and ask for. So, the next god that we're going to be talking about is Aman Sinaya. He's the god of fishermen. And I chose this guy because I thought the issues around his name were very interesting. So there's been a lot of debate about his gender in recent years. And so, like, a lot of people think that he's a goddess of fishermen. And do you want to know where the confusion likely comes from?
Where?
It comes from the Encyclopedia Mythologica, written in 2009 by Marvel Comics.
No! Stop! Why is this up for debate?
It's a canon event.
So here's the quote from Marvel Comics. So, according to ancient myths, the Earth Mother Gaia gave birth to the three primary Diwata, Bathala, the supreme sky father and Diwata's king, Aman Sinaya, goddess of the sea, and Amihan, god of the wind. So first off, Earth Mother Gaia is Greek.
Yeah.
Why are we leaving this to Marvel? I thought the Spanish were bad enough.
Why are people taking Marvel seriously about this?
I don't even know why Marvel did, like, they have Thor and Loki already.
Exactly.
They're literally just, they want to go after every single...
Marvel can't even write a woman. Why are they writing Filipino mythology?
As sad as it is, it's true.
It is true.
They even botched Thor and Loki.
I can't.
They can't even get, like, a decently recorded Norse mythology correct. And
They're
then
gonna-
they go for
You know what they're gonna get a very strongly worded email.
Didn't in the last Thor movie was Love and Thunder, didn't they see the Greek gods?
I never watched it, so I don't
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not a fan of Marvel.
Because in that movie, I'm pretty sure one plot point is Thor has to, like, get Zeus's lightning bolt for whatever reason. And he ends up killing Zeus either killing Zeus or like maiming him or something, and then he like takes the lightning bolt. I don't even remember the movie anymore, but I just remember it was like, why are the Nordic and the Greek gods meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember. It's because they cut themselves off from humanity, and they were like, Thor, you gotta just like let them be, like come live with us at Olympus.
Wait, the Greek gods?
Greek gods. It was like it just made no sense.
Average Marvel movie.
I could also just be totally misremembering a lot of it, but they were so hell-bent on staying out of humanity's issues.
Man, that's weird for the Greek gods.
That is.
Alright, so the thing about Aman Sinaya's name and how we're sure that he's a male god is that his name literally translates to father of Sinaya. And this is an interesting thing about pre-colonial Tagalog naming traditions, is that the parents actually took on the name of their first child when their child got married. So, like, if the child's name was Ilog, their mother would be named Si Ilogwin, and their father would be named Si Ilog. So
That's cute.
But only for the first child?
only the first child.
Oh, wow. So the rest of them were practically disowned, name-wise. Cut that out. Cut that out.
Honestly. But, like, they probably had their own naming traditions for, like, second or third children. But, I mean, it makes sense that the first child would be honored the most. But I just find it interesting because usually it's the child that gets named after the parents.
Yeah.
In other cultures.
Damn, it must suck being a middle child.
It always sucks.
It always
being a
sucks.
middle child.
Aren't we all middle children?
I have only one brother, so I don't know.
Asian parents
We
putting
share
all
the
the
middle
pressure
child.
on the oldest child, even in myth.
All right, and then for the rest of his name, Sinaya was a term that meant the first catch of a fish net, a fish trap, or a hunting dog. So his name literally translates to father of fishing.
Sounds like my dad would love him.
So the father of fishing is the god of fishermen, very appropriate.
We need a hat that says father of fishing. That needs to be merged somewhere.
Your dad would buy it, Trena.
He would.
He would. I want to buy your dad a women want me, fish fear me hat.
Okay.
So, in the pre-colonial culture, fishers never used the fish from their first catch, and they most likely just sacrificed it all to Aman Sinaya, because they would hope that sacrificing their first catch would let him give them more. And then, when visiting a fisher, you weren't allowed to say anything about if they got new nets or hunting dogs until they got that first catch, or else the virtue is taken from the nets and the cunning from the dogs. So
They said not one word. Not one word.
you have to be so silent about their nets. So that's Aman Sinaya and Lakapati. So now we're going to move on to the final section, which is monsters in Filipino mythology. Because I finished up my research at like 10 p.m. last night, and some of these monsters are genuinely kind of creepy. So, monsters in Filipino mythology, they were typically called aswang, and there are a bunch of different definitions for aswang, but the definition that I'm using today is just the broad definition for all evil beings in Filipino folklore. But another definition is a lot of Filipino cultures agree that three things need to define an aswang, and the first thing is the diet consists of human blood or liver, they have a preference for unborn children, and they prey on children or sick people. But that's not the definition we're going with.
So do these monsters belong to... I know that when the Spaniards came, that one of their big threats was like the existence of hell, because hell did not exist to a lot of cultures. There was no place that you would go if you committed sin. And so the Spaniards, that was like the whole concept of hell was what revolutionized, the world. And so I'm wondering if these monsters, are they called monsters because there is no hell, or do they just exist like on the earth?
Well, there actually was, in pre-colonial Philippines, there was kind of like a heaven and hell. whether that's like a Spanish view on the religion or not is hard to say.
Yeah, it is hard to say.
But they basically had like heaven was this island where all of your ancestors lived, and you would like go there. And then there was, I think it was called Sitan, which was hell. So I don't remember a whole lot about what was said about that. But I think a lot of these monsters are basically like spirits of the dead that got like morphed into something else.
Yeah, so not necessarily hell, but more just folklore
Yeah.
type monsters. You know, the stuff under your bed.
Yeah. There was this one monster that I didn't include in my notes, but she's basically like a woman who died in childbirth, who has like a gaped open stomach with her dead infant in there, and she just like wanders around and kills men.
It's honestly really sad.
Yeah.
That sounds like the Bloodborne, the game.
I've never heard of that game in my entire
I've
life.
seen like clips of it. Like
That entire game is basically just like
like the horror of
motherhood
Yeah.
and being forced into it and stuff.
yeah. But that spirit was basically like a warning to men to like treat their pregnant women better.
Okay, let's go. The Spaniards could never. I'm just saying.
So many monsters are just targeted towards keeping children in line. It's good that we have one to
Yeah.
keep men in
Let's
line.
go. You're so real for that.
So I have 4 aswang here. So I was thinking of having one of you guys choose one each, and then if we have time, we'll go over the rest of them. So I'm just gonna give you the names, and then I want you guys to interpret what you think they are.
Okay.
Oh no.
So the first one is Bakunawa. Then we have the Tikbalang, and then the Nangangatok, and the Manananggal.
Are they all grouped together, or we're supposed to guess each separate one?
I want you to choose them based off the vibes of the names.
The
Vibes
third
off the
one.
names.
The Nanagaga. I can't even.
Nangangatok.
All right.
I have
My
trouble
guess
saying
on that one,
too.
let's go. A lot of the monsters that you named are dead people. So I'm not going to say that it's like animal-like, but more so that it's a haunted person.
Well, they're not all dead people. Like, there are some that are just straight up monsters.
So my guess for this one would be a dead child
Or
coming back.
I think something that might help you a bit is that Tagalog, at least, it's the language is like very like it describes the thing, kind of like
I think that's all languages.
yeah, I don't know. But like the motion you make with your mouth and the way that it sounds, it kind of mimics the thing,
Yeah, like automatopoeia, like bonk.
kind of.
Bonk.
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 That's a very simplified way to explain it, but
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's like there was this whole thing on TikTok a while back of like the word bulaklak. It means flower in Tagalog, and it's like with the motion you make with your mouth is like a flower blooming, kind of.
aw, that's so cute.
Yeah, it's really cool. So anyway, we're going with the Nangangatok, and then what other one did you guys want?
Let's do number 1.
The Bakunawa?
Yes.
All right. So, since I had a little bit of trouble like finding specifically Tagalog monsters, so these are from all different kinds of mythology across the Philippines. So Bakunawa is a Visayan creature that's also seen in a bunch of different Filipino folktales. It's a very popular like myth and story. And there actually is a recorded story for this one.
Really?
So that's great. So, in the beginning, Bathala originally created 7 moons instead of 1, so that there would be 1 per day of the week. And one night, a terrifying creature coiled around the world like an evil serpent, and that was Bakunawa, and he was basically envious of Bathala's creation, and he ended up swallowing 6 of the moons. And then when Bathala saw that Bakunawa swallowed 6 of the moons, he planted bamboo on the last one. Bamboo showing up again.
Bamboo.
And that created the stains that you can see on the surface of the moon.
That's
So
cute.
basically the surface of the moon is covered in bamboo.
Let's go. Aw. That's wholesome.
The moon is cheese. The moon is bamboo. What is the moon?
A rock.
The moon can be everything.
It's not just a boulder. It's a rock.
Why do you say that so hurt?
Have you not seen that audio?
No.
Bruh.
And Nico is the one who hasn't watched SpongeBob, and he
What?
understood.
I can't.
It's because it's all over TikTok.
That's literally one of the most iconic SpongeBob memes.
So that was basically all Bathala did. So the humans were terrified of losing their last moon, and then one day they saw that Bakunawa ate the final moon, and they all freaked out. They started banging drums and screaming and yelling, and that caused Bakunawa to eventually spit out the moon. And this is actually appropriate because this story explains what eclipses were, and today was the eclipse.
What? Wow. Aw. I love this story.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. And what's fun about it is that I actually did, when I visited the Philippines, I actually like banged pots and yelled and stuff. Because like it's like a thing that people do for New Year's.
Aw.
So it's a really cool thing. All right. And then we had the Nanganga talk. So that's basically invisible spirits that are harbingers of bad omens and terrible things to come. And it's basically just at night, if you hear someone knock on your door, you're recommended to look through a window first before opening the door in case you let it in. And it's similar to another creature called the Kumakatok, which was 3 robed figures that knock on doors in the middle of the night and bring bad omens.
Oh, I thought
But-
you were gonna say they knock on doors and they just leave. They knock on-
The
Who is it?
original door. What was it called? Doorbell ditch?
Yeah, the original doorbell ditch.
But here's the thing about the Nanganga that I read in the article. Unlike the Kumakatok, you will never see the Nanganga. That's a direct quote.
That is indeed.
And basically, if you see the Nanganga, or if you hear it knock on your door and you open the door, you won't see anything there. But a few days later, something terrible will happen. But if you peek out the window first and see no one there and don't open the door, then it'll just move on to its next victim. And in towns in present-day Philippines where people still believe in this creature, people would cover their doors in like broken glass and nails, and they'll refuse to answer the door unless you ring the doorbell.
Wow.
I like how the modern solution is get a doorbell.
Pretty much.
You get a... People are so scared of this monster that you set up a whole Amazon doorbell.
And then this, the article I was reading about this monster actually came with a story, and it's pretty creepy.
Oh no.
So it's a pretty short one, so I'm just going to read it out. A lot of people don't have the best impressions of backpacking, but there are a lot of things worth seeing. Once you get off the regular roads, away from all the tourists, and really settle down in the rhythm of the local life, you'll discover just how much it has to offer. I went to a small town not far from Manila to start my journey in the Philippines. After a few misadventures with some buses and some jeepneys, I stopped by this tiny community on the edge of a mountainside called Montinola. I was hungry, so the moment I saw a bulalo shop, I dropped my bags and did my best to interact with the locals. They were very kind people. They told me all about the places I should visit around their town. The hot spring, the mountainside, and the beautiful river were all wonderful surprises. This is why I enjoy backpacking. You get to see sights that aren't on any tour map or travel blog. You get to see the beauty of the area on your own. The town itself had a very interesting architecture. I was about to knock on a door when a local grabbed my hand and stopped me. He explained that the door was covered in bubog, broken glass, and that I should use the doorbell instead. I asked why they would put something so dangerous on a door and if it causes accidents, but the local just said that that's the way they do things here. It helps people live longer. The doors seemed to be covered with dangerous things. In my hotel, there are some nails attached to the front of all the doors in the hallways. I asked the manager about this strange tradition, and she said it was to ward off evil spirits. She told me that they would never open a door to anyone that doesn't use the doorbell. It seems like an odd thing to do in a town and very dangerous. I don't want to think about all the accidents that might happen with those sharp things on the door. It just seems overkill. But I don't want to judge the locals. They're very friendly people, and it seems to be working out for them. They even gave me a schedule of when I should go up to the river so I can see the sunset. I should sleep early tonight so I can get a head start, but someone keeps knocking on my door. I think it was a prank by one of the local kids because every time I open the door, no one is there. I'll talk to the manager about it in the morning. And that's the end.
All right, locking my door forever, okay.
When I was reading it at 10 p.m., it was kind of creepy.
I'm just like, why do they just tell him that, oh, that's just what we do here and not, like, warn him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was all my notes. Any closing thoughts?
If I walked up to a house and they had broken glass on the door, I would be terrified. I would be looking for a bathroom because I would be soiling myself.
Soiled it.
Closing thoughts. I think Filipino mythology is very detailed for what we have. Because I would think that if these stories are being passed down orally, and especially after colonization, that a lot of them would be, lost to time or destroyed by the Spanish. But there's, from what you provided, there's surprisingly pretty detailed stories on everything that went on. And I wonder, for what remains, how much was actually lost and how much more detailed all of this mythology is.
Yeah. And the thing about, the monsters specifically is that those still live on in the culture. They might be by different names and stuff, but, they still exist somewhat.
And I wonder how much is... Because I know that for Mexicans, there's a lot of Spanish culture that's mixed in with indigenous culture. And so you have a lot of people who will do things that are, inherently, from... our indigenous ancestors, and we have no idea, there was, here at Delta, there was once a performance on behalf of, people who actually were indigenous, and they did, some sort of dance, and they played this sort of song on some drums, and that was when I realized that my mom sings that song to babies. The beat on the drum is what she sang to babies, and I would sing it to my cat without even knowing that it was ever, it had indigenous roots.
That's
and
cool.
So, there's all these little things that intertwine. And so it makes me wonder, if these stories, if people in the Philippines believe in these stories at the same time as believing in, other stories that stem from Catholicism or the Spanish, and how those cultures intertwine.
Yeah. So the thing about the gods specifically is that the Spanish needed to figure out a way to convert people. And the thing with polytheism that I saw on TikTok was it's hard to convert a polytheistic person into monotheism because they'll just add the god into their pantheon.
Yeah.
Nice.
But
goal achieved.
But they ended up using Bathala, since it's kind of similar to God. They used Bathala as a way to convert them, but they came across this issue of they're still just worshiping Bathala. They don't see him as the same as our God.
Yeah, that's messy.
Yeah, so I'm sure that the specific type of Catholicism that's practiced in the Philippines is at least influenced by pre-colonial history and culture.
Definitely. It's just really depressing to know that it is influenced, but a lot of people wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
Especially people practicing that religion. You wouldn't know how far back those roots go.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a pretty good discussion. So, next episode, we're going to be doing Celtic mythology.
The Fae!
Let's go! I don't know anything about any mythology, guys, but...
Neither do I. I'm just here for the ride.
Yes. This is very interesting. Thank you, Nico.
Thanks, Nico.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, but we'll be here next week. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.